Okay, good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Markish, and I am the publisher and editor of ModernAnalyst.com, the premier online community for business analysts. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Designing Interfaces Your Users Will Love. Today's featured speaker is John Hastings-Kimball, Director of Customer Evangelism for Serena Software. The webinar would last approximately 60 minutes, including a Q&A session. So make sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature of the webinar software. I would like to say thank you to Serena Software for sponsoring this event. At this time, I will turn over to John to get us started.
Great, thank you. As Adrian said, my name is John Hastings-Kimball. I've been at Serena about a year or so, and I have a great job. Customer evangelist, first off, great title. And second of all, great job in that I get to go around and visit all of our customers and understand what it is that they're doing with our products, all the really cool things that they're building for their end users, and kind of bringing those back, bringing requirements back to R&D and kind of driving strategy going forward. So great job, and I come to that job after using their tools for about 9 years. So got a lot of experience with their tools and the great things that you can do with them. So hopefully, just like anything else, a PowerPoint presentation is an exercise in UI. So I worked really hard at building you a nice deck of slides. But that said, I am not going to spend all of my time in slideware. I think you'll be bored to death with an hour's worth of slides. So I'm going to try to keep it interactive and show you some applications that do both good and bad design. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Serena Business Mashups up front, not much, just a little bit there, and position it really about how it can help you as a business analyst. Then I'll jump into a bad design, bad application, and good design, and really both of those are going to be coming at it from the perspective of I've got a requirement of building a proposal tool for my sales force, and that proposal tool has to support a set of requirements around routing based on percentage discount thresholds. It has to generate a document, and it has to provide an interface to allow for variable input. So all of those components can be put together in a good way and a bad way, and we'll take a look at both of those. Then we'll go through kind of some of my key design principles. I really wouldn't consider myself someone that is a UI expert. However, I've been building applications for 9 or 10 years, and it is, for me, it is the critical piece of an application to actually draw users in, keep them using the application. I really don't care how good an application is. If it's not usable, if it's not friendly and not easy to use, your retention is not going to be there, and you're going to have a problem kind of selling it. And then finally, if we've got a little bit of time towards the end, I'm going to dive into, show you how I built the actual applications to give you a little taste or flavor of Serena Business Mashups and how it works. So when you're building process applications, I'm going to focus my conversations today around building process-based applications and UIs that correspond with process-based applications. This may be very representative or very typical of your organization in that work is kind of flying around the organization in a very unstructured manner, either by email or spreadsheets, shared reports, whatever it may be, bits and pieces of an overall process are being gathered around the organization, but in a very haphazard or inconsistent way. And if you really dig down into what's going on here, although the arrows might be going all over the place, obviously if you deliver a proposal to the finance team before contracts has had a chance to sign off on it, well, that's not the right process, and they're going to send you back. They're going to send you back to the contracts folks before they are willing to invoice the customer anyway. So what might look like a haphazard process, when you dig down a little bit deeper, I think ultimately you get to something that is a bit more rigid, a bit more defined. And if you have a tool around that can help you implement those things, software is great at delivering those process-based applications. One of the struggles that you have as an organization, though, is budgets are flat. There's growing demand for IT resources and IT strategic resources, SOA initiatives and master data management programs, and building a departmental or somewhat cross-departmental process application may not be high on their radar. So you're not going to get necessarily the resources to bear to actually deliver those applications for you. So you need a tool that's going to allow you to enforce these processes, build these processes, but do it in a rapid manner and do it in a cost-effective manner and do it in a manner that doesn't necessarily involve tons of application developers. So boiling down that process challenge, these are the kind of three main points that we see around process issues in any organization that we might go in and talk to. The fact that work is not routed efficiently across teams and systems. That's that diagram that we just saw with arrows going everywhere. When you have a process like that, those processes aren't repeatable. They're not traceable. They're not auditable. You can't run a report easily that says how many proposals did we generate for X product, or what is X salesperson's conversion percentage. So you can do that in perhaps an email system, but you've got an intern or perhaps yourself, unfortunately, digging through piles and piles of emails and spreadsheets to kind of cull that data out. So that's certainly an issue that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And then finally, those current solutions for automating those processes are expensive, cumbersome, and complex. A lot of times, coming at a process, departmental workflow process tool like this with a monolithic BPM system is killing a mosquito with a sledgehammer, and it's just not going to be cost effective to do that. And so perhaps it just goes into the backlog. So when you look at process-based applications, we see 5 kind of main components around building those applications. Of course, highlighted in the middle there is what we're going to focus on today, but in order to get to that point, you have to start with the human workflow. What is the process that we're trying to build on and to put a UI on top of? There's an underlying process of how work moves between people, departments, teams of people. Beyond that, defining that process flow, you have the data elements. What data do you want to persist and share and report on inside of that application? What are the necessary data elements to present to your users? And then moving on, the most important point is how you tie those two pieces together. How do you take what's in the workflow process, how are you collecting that data, and how are you representing that data to your end users in both an input fashion and just a simple consumption fashion. Going beyond that, you've got those couple points around security and system orchestrations, which we won't necessarily touch on in any great detail today at all, but an important point of any application is the security, who can see it, who can interact with it, and who can interact with the right parts of it. And then the system orchestration piece, in that I build a process-based application that does proposal generation. Well, there might be things on the front of that, like CRM feeding into that application, and there might be things on the back end, like an order management system, SAP or something like that, where once the customer accepts, we want to initiate the order. And so those applications, those process-based applications that you're building, should take those things into consideration and be able to leverage investments that may already be inside your organization to handle those other aspects of the business. So Serena Business Mashups, how can it help you? Mike Lean, who you'll meet later, is handling the questions, kind of gave this tagline to me, and I love it. Go from process pain to process gain. Great tagline, and we can do that in days, not months. The tool is going to allow you to stand up things, talking around the first point there, whether you're building a prototype that you're going to hand over to developers. Obviously, picture speak 1,000 words, and that 150-page requirements document that you might want to build, you might be able to build a prototype of that application a whole lot more rapidly, hand it over to your developers to go away and code in Java. In the meantime, you've got a working application that your users can get up and running on, or iterate through the next set of your requirements. Fantastic tool for prototyping, and by the way, it's a working application. So 9 times out of 10, I would argue that if you can build that prototype in the application, well, you might as well go ahead and just use that as your working application as opposed to just the prototype. It's a configuration-based tool. It's not code-based. You guys, as the business analyst community, are kind of our target market. The guys that understand the problems in the business and the guys that have a fairly good grasp of technology and what needs to be done inside of an application. You have obvious ideas on data models and all sorts of things like that. You can configure an application yourself. You don't need to throw something over to a developer to get going. You take the tool in a visual design environment, you're going and running with this and building applications yourselves. You can do this very quickly. And then, the last point I think is a critical one in that, again, because some of these projects might get tossed into the backlog of IT's list of projects, if you had to bubble one of those up to the top, it might be at the cost of foregoing something like an existing project around SOA enablement or master data management, as I was saying earlier. So those existing investments, those strategic investments that IT is focusing on, you're going to leverage inside of your application. Let them do that, and you guys can go ahead and actually leverage those investments in building applications to deliver value to your end users more rapidly. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Serena Business Mashups, not from the perspective of showing you the application, but from the perspective of showing you some applications that I built in there. This may have timed out, so I may just have to log in for a second again, so bear with me. But to show you an application, that proposal application that I talked about a little bit earlier. I have an application that a salesperson wants to initiate a proposal for a customer. They need to input a certain set of information around who that customer is, an executive summary about what they discussed with the customer, what they want the pricing to be, all sorts of things like that. All of those kind of inputs. Perhaps you call it Mad Libs for salespeople. Give me a noun, give me a verb. We'll put it together and come out with a funny story. In this case, some of the pricing that salespeople put together may be a funny story, but that's the idea, is that you have a form or a system that collects that metadata and overlays it with the underlying system data around the marketing collateral that might be around the products, etc. Puts all that together in a rapid format so that you can deliver a consistent, branded document to your customer regardless of who the salesperson is, regardless of their location. They're not cutting and pasting and sending the IBM presentation to Oracle. So a good tool, a good use case, and let's go ahead and run through it. So I'm going to submit a new proposal, and I've got these well labeled so I know where to go. We'll start out with the bad design. So you might look at this and go, okay, well, there's a couple things on here that the developer tried to do, right? We tried to, hey, requirement 1 is branding. Sure, let me slap a logo on there. Done. That's not necessarily good enough, but he gets some points for doing that. You've got a very wide screen. Data is not necessarily collected or aggregated in any way, but let's go ahead and put something in. We're going to do a proposal for Caterpillar. Got some content to save me the time here, so I'm going to copy in my executive summary, paste that in. While we're here at this point, this is a text input field. We're expecting a lot of text to be input in this field, and we only gave the user about 3.5 lines of actual viewing space to view that content and a ton of scrolling. So certainly something to keep in mind as you're developing these things. Give the users, if you're expecting a lot of content, give the users some space to put that content in. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a product. Let's pick Serena Business Mashups, our on-demand product. And I'm going to say 5 seats at, let's say, a discount of 14%. And oh, something just went to green. Now, a couple things happened here, and when I click Add Line, a couple more things are going to happen. A whole lot of stuff happened on this screen when I clicked Add Line and when I moved out of the discount field. But there's not really any context around it, right? You've got the regional director just changed to green. What does that mean, and why did that change? I've got a bunch of cost fields over here that may or may not be interesting to me. I can't really see them. They're disabled, so they're kind of grayed out. So, what's going on here? Again, the application is doing what it needs to do. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now I'm in Serena's product, what we would call a state view, where I'm looking at the data in kind of a closed-up fashion. And we've got this great state change history or audit trail at the top. I would encourage any of you that are designing for process-based applications to absolutely mandate that the developers give you an exposed to you and the end users audit trail. And this is one representation of an audit trail and where you are in the process. Nice feature, not necessarily relevant at the very top of the form. I'm not going to beat you over the head with that. The real important stuff for me is a little bit further down when I start getting into the information around the actual proposal. So at this point in the process, I need to go ahead and send this to my RD for approval. But why? I thought, I'm supposed to be able to generate proposals all on my own with asking for approval. Oh wait, I thought I saw a document somewhere that said, what the percentage breakdowns were for who could generate a proposal at what price levels and who needed to approve beyond. So maybe I need to send it off to my RD. So I'll go ahead and send it off to my RD. And at this point, I get my whole form back, and I can input some new stuff. I'm going to go ahead and send that along. And at this point, you can see that I'm moving it a bit further along in the process. Another pet peeve of mine, I've got an executive summary field, a large text field, with another comments field right under it, and those two fields tend to run together. There's no kind of distinction between where one ends and one starts, other than the fact that I've got something sticking out here at the side. And there's nothing really different about this point in the process than the draft point in the process. If I didn't have this thing up here at the top kind of telling me where I was, I really wouldn't have a good handle on pulling up an item and seeing where it is in the process. I'm going to go to the third step, and the RD goes ahead and says, yes, the proposal is approved. I can give it back to the salesperson if I want, ask him a few more questions, but I'm confident that this is a good proposal, so let's go ahead and generate it. And at this point, we just move it forward. The proposal's now approved, and we generate a link out here that goes out and allows you to pull up that document and view it. So again, all those requirements met. Application does what it needs to do. It does some routing based on some business rules. It presents an inputable field value. It generates a document. It does all of those things that it needs to do. But we all know bad design when we see it. Not necessarily great. It gets the job done, and yeah, maybe some salespeople would use this, but they might also continue to use their Word docs and cut and paste too. So let's take that same application and look at it in a slightly different context. So the first thing I'm going to do here on the presentation in the good, and forgive me if you guys don't like this, that's quite all right. It may not meet your corporate standards, it may not meet your likings, but this is what I consider to be something that's a bit more useful. Hopefully you will too. So at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, just like in the first one, the sales rep for what the customer name is. And I'm going to choose Caterpillar again. And at that point, oh, hey, wait a minute, I just clicked out of that. What am I getting back? I'm getting a list of existing proposals that are already out there for the same customer. So what might have been a side note in the document in the previous example, hey, make sure that there's no other proposals out there, or you might want to do your due diligence to go ahead and find out whether or not there's existing proposals out there for Caterpillar. We're in an age where mashups and all those kind of external data sources are available and you can pull them in. Go ahead and think about doing those things. The same sort of thing here when I go into CAT as the ticker. Why not pull in the an RSS feed or the stock price so that when if I'm issuing this proposal around earnings season and I see that earnings are up, stock price is up, there's a pretty good chance that at a 14% discount that this may be something that's very palatable to CAT and they may be willing to go forward. So think about beginning to kind of aggregate external data. Now these are, forgive me, RSSs. This RSS feed is taking a bit of time to pull in today, but you need to think about these things in the context of externally available data to your organization and both internally as well. So this might be, rather than an RSS feed, maybe it's customer support calls from this company, or the number of the last set of visit notes from your CRM for that salesperson, so that they're able to see that sort of thing. Then we're a little further down. You can see that we're grouping things together now a little bit better. So I've got the customer information with the little Rolodex icon. I've got the executive information here. So here's where I'm going to put my executive summary. I can put some more comments in. I've got another grouped box that shows me, that talks about license and maintenance costs. So you're really kind of beginning to group things together, showing the driving behavior of your end users based on the desired outcomes that you want. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And it was 5 and a discount of 14%. And at this point, not only do I require the regional director field again and show it, so I don't know if you noticed that when it was below 10%, that field wasn't there at all. That's not a required data input field, so why show it when you don't need to show it? But when I go above a certain threshold, I show that, and we also tell you why we're showing it, right? At this point, the discount percentage that you input requires your RD's authorization to approve. So if I went up even higher, now I need RD and VP authorization. So when you're showing those exceptions, kind of explain to your end users why you're showing those exceptions and why you're asking for that additional bit of information. I think it goes a long way from a training perspective and from an understanding of how the application is just kind of working. Your customers are going to realize what's going on a lot more easily. And now you'll notice when I add the line, I took all of those extra fields that were over here at the side, the total discount, the total price, the total discounted price, and I put those into a little bit more context and put them as a footer at the bottom of that pricing table as I'm building it, as opposed to just kind of sticking them out there on the side. Okay, so now, just like before, after I click OK and I'm in that state view, as we called it, I don't have that big state change history at the top kind of banging that user over the head. But what I am doing is, excuse me, is using images and colors There goes the RSS feed. I'm using some images and colors to convey where you are in the process. So you'll see as we move through the process, the general background color of the application is changing, and I've got an icon in here to kind of tell me where I am. So without reading a word on this page, I know that I'm in the draft state because I'm seeing the pencil. A little bit further on, when you see the dollar sign, the money sign, you know that's been an approved proposal without even looking at it, or I'm sorry, without even reading it. So those things for me are very, very important. They make the application look a lot prettier. You're using color, but it's not just color for the sake of color. It's color and images for the sake of conveying a message. As I scroll through here, I consistently have that same kind of executive summary. Here's the sales reporting section. Here's the license and revenue section. Just like the last one, I'm going to request that RD to approve that proposal once again. And at this point, if you remember the bad design, I showed a lot more data elements than this on that form. There were a lot more inputtable fields. In this case, all I've got is the customer name. If for whatever reason I realize that, oh, maybe I should capitalize Caterpillar. And I want to, you know, a week has gone by since I wrote this initial executive summary. So let me tweak this a little bit before I send it off to my RD for his approval. And comments are required. So display the data that you need to display, require the data elements that you need to display at a particular action. This is not, I'm requesting RD approval. I don't need all of the other pieces that go along with this application. All I need is, I'm giving this to my RD. Do I want to convey any comments to him? Do I need to make a tweak on this field or that field? That's it. Don't show the superfluous stuff if you don't need to. Okay. So again, here we are, kind of an orangey, peachy background. Kind of goes with the size and color of the RD's head there. And you've got an image there that conveys to you that this is, you know, waiting for executive approval. The RD is looking to approve this. As I scroll down, we took that comment section and moved it in here where it made a little bit more sense around the comments are really for the regional director, the sales VP, and the salesperson to all have a conversation. None of those comments are actually going to make their way into the resulting document, so let's keep them apart and separate from the executive summary. And you'll notice that, you know, as this is moving through the process, that state change history is still an important part of the process. It's still an important part of the application, that audit trail. But it's not front and center, top of the application. We're showing you the data that is most important to you as the end user consuming that information about Caterpillar as quickly as possible. And when I need to know what's going on in the process, where we are, who touched what and when, I have access to that, but it's in a different context. It's in a different place where it's not front and center. So what I'm going to do here finally is go ahead and generate the proposal. And at this point, if you remember on the other one, all we did was give the user a link to the document. That's great. It's functional. It's there. But if we're generating a PDF document, well, PDFs are embeddable in web pages just like anything else. That's URL addressable. So why not embed it into the document or into the process as we're working on it? So right here you can see that I've broken my application into kind of two tabs. I'll talk a little bit about tabs a little bit later. Not a huge fan of tabs. They have very, very defined requirements for me as to when I use them. But in this case, I've gotten them broken into two tabs. So at this point, all of that input data that I had is not as important at this point in the process as the resulting document is. So let's show you the resulting document. Let's not give it a link where you need to go off and get it somewhere. So I've got a document that inserts the customer name, the submit date, who the submitter was. Here's our executive summary. So we're generating these documents on the fly. We're showing them there to the end user. And because you know, Acrobat and PDFs have certain native capabilities, I can print this, I can save it, I can email it off to the customer, whatever I need to do. But this document is controlled and generated by our process, and then once it's generated, you can take it and do what you need to. And if I go ahead and just click over here to the supplemental tab now, well, at this point you can say, oh, here's all that other information that we had. Less important at this point in the process, but still might be valuable to someone that needs to look at some of this. So put it in a supplemental tab and you know, kind of move it off. Still accessible. It's still all here, but it's kind of moved to the background because the proposal now is the important piece. I'm just going to take this a step forward. I just want to get to that $sign as we talked about before. I've now sent it off to the customer. I know that I've got the little email there. Again, looking at this page, I know where we are in the process. And finally, the customer comes back and accepts, and we're all green. So I hope you found that valuable. I hope, Michaeline, are some good questions coming in, or am I doing a good job of putting everyone?
You're doing okay. We got some questions. We'll get to those again.
Great. All right. So I'm going to run through, you know, kind of reiterate some of those design principles that I just talked about and showed you in the application. Something that's really big and probably the biggest thing for me when building applications is present the right data at the right time. I've seen plenty of applications that, you know, are quote-unquote state-driven applications that all you have is an edit button. You click edit. Everything becomes available as an input field. You make whatever changes you want. You have a drop-down field for what the status is. Change your status. Off you go, and just cross your fingers that the next person in line has everything that they need. That's not a great way to build a process app, right? If you're building a process app, when I'm going from state A to state B to communicate information from my team to another team, require that information. Make sure you get that information and don't complicate it with lots of other superfluous data. Require the data you need at a point in time. And as you need to move forward, build on that. So by the end of your process, when you go through the 15 steps that make up your overall process, you have all of the data points that you ultimately need at the end, but you're not cluttering that up with asking for them all and showing them all right up front and making 3 of them required and 15 or 20 of them optional. Ask for the data when you need it. And then finally, kind of use the mashup capabilities to kind of drive user behavior. Don't put it in a user document that you should check to make sure there are no other proposals out there. You probably want to make sure and take a good look at if you were a good salesperson, you would do X, Y, and Z. Don't hope that you have good salespeople. Just make your salespeople better by putting the right information in front of them. Be considerate of your audience. So you as a designer need to put the right elements into your design to really make it work well. A lot of these are very kind of low level, really simple. You know, the first one, I'm sure everyone would realize it's a takeaway, but you know, everyone hates left-right scrolling, so please don't ever build an application that requires you to left-right scroll. This is why I hate tabs. I can't tell you how many applications I've seen that have 5 tabs across a screen so that I don't need to scroll up and down, but tab 1 has 5 fields, tab 2 has 3, tab 4 has 6. I don't care if you highlight on those tabs how many required fields are in there. I guarantee that your users are going to miss them and have to go back. They're going to try to submit it. They're going to get an error message back that says you missed these required fields. They're going to look at the form and go, where? I don't see them. I don't see them. Oh, there they are under that tab. Let me go over there. Don't like it, never have. I would much prefer, this is user preference perhaps, but I would much prefer to scroll through a longer form than have to click through tabs and hunt and peck and find my required data. If you do have a long form and you've got a lot of data input, if you've got a lot of optional fields, question whether or not that's truly relevant. Perhaps do some interesting JavaScripting techniques or something like that to present a short form. Talk about this 2 bullets down. Perhaps a short form that just shows the required data, and then a click on a toggle field to open that up to show you more data. And maybe that superfluous data that's optional is there because for you it satisfies a fringe use case or a fringe requirement. So it needs to be in the application, but if 90% of your users aren't ever going to need it or want to see it, don't make it front and center in a critical part of the application for everyone to see. And along those lines, if you've got a long form and a big section of optional fields, don't ever stick a required field all the way down at the bottom. The users are going to start scrolling through. They're going to see their whole screen is filled up with optional data. They're not going to think to scroll all the way down unless that's where you put your button. They're not going to think to scroll all the way down, and they may miss those fields. So try to keep all of your required data together. Along the same lines of dependent data, on the bad application that we showed, when you pick the product, on 1 column over and 6 fields down, I displayed the price of that product. Really hard to see that when I change this field over here, this field way out of my line of sight is actually changing. And that might actually be important for your users to see that data. So if you've got fields driving other fields, kind of put them together so that you can see them. Now, if that's not necessarily representative or necessary in that model and you can move them apart, that's okay. But if you do want the salesperson to know what the price of the product is when they pick it, you might want to put that right near it. Consistency is another big one for me. Right up until the last minute last night as I was going through these applications, I was finding things that, oh, this field on this form is different from the 5 other forms that I've done. Let me keep iterating through that and making sure that everything is grouped together, everything is consistent as the data moves through the process. Now, the data may be building on itself so that I've got more data later in the process than I do at the beginning of the process, but the data that's consistent and moving across is in a consistent field order, is in a consistent presentation, so that regardless of a user coming in at the front of the process or the end of the process, they know where to look for certain sets of data. And then as you begin to move outside of an individual application out into multiple applications, whether they're on the same platform or on completely different applications built across, one of the things that I really strive for is using that same design paradigm across applications. So if I've got a proposal generation tool and a sales trial tool and a customer refunds request tool that are all kind of part of a sales operations umbrella, I want all of those to kind of function in the same way. Now, if I go out and I build a bunch of stuff for IT, that may have a completely different look and feel, a completely separate design paradigm. Maybe, maybe not. But those applications that fall under a particular umbrella of sales operations or finance operations or IT ops, whatever it may be, those should all kind of look and work together. If they need to work together, if you've got users that are in multiple applications, they're able to kind of jump in. You roll out a new application, they jump in, they look at it, they say, yep, I understand what's going on here. Might be a completely different platform, but if the paradigms are the same, hopefully that training curve is a lot less. And then finally, the build kind of fit to purpose. As I mentioned before, color and images for me really convey meaning. Use them to convey meaning, not just to tick the box that yes, I've got I've got branding. Really look to use things beyond the data that you have on there to convey messages to your users. If any of you don't already know or haven't seen it before, iStock Photo is amazing for cheap, high quality, easily accessible, huge variety of images, images, illustrations, video, all sorts of things that you can use to kind of put into your applications at very, very small, very low royalty charges. And then for me, one of the best ways to do it, if you have a tool that allows you to kind of develop in an agile type environment, iterating through the process is a much better way to work than a waterfall. Hand me a giant document of requirements, and I'm sure you guys have written plenty of requirements documents that don't get looked at or that don't get input from the business, so you end up writing it, that you hand over to the development team that don't really look at it all that detailed, and then what they deliver is not what the business asked for, and you guys are stuck in the middle trying to explain it out and why it does one thing versus another, and well, you asked for that, and no, I didn't. Forget all of that. Build in an environment where you can rapidly stand something up, show it, build with the business participants in the room, saying, is this what you want? Is this what it should look like? And just iterate through it very, very rapidly. Your requirements for paper will go down and your productivity will go up. So now I'm going to go back and get into showing you a little bit about how I built these apps. Hopefully I've gotten enough interest from you guys to kind of to warrant this, but I'm going to go through it and hopefully you'll find some value. So we look at, as I mentioned earlier, Serena Business Mashups as a BPM tool, but BPM in a slightly different context than your traditional BPM, BPMS, business process management suites. We're much leaner. There are certain pieces that we don't have that would make us not qualify as a BPM solution, but we do a lot of things that are. And what really differentiates us is kind of going back to the slide that we had earlier about the fact that you're under pressure to show improvement quickly. This is easy to do. You're configuring applications. You're not writing lots and lots of code. Your development times are not long, so your costs are significantly reduced. And then because you're leveraging those IT infrastructure investments, you're leveraging those inside of the applications that you're building, your ROI on those investments as well as the application investments that you're making are increased as well. So Serena Business Mashups as an application kind of has three main pillars. It's a design environment. It allows you to do a drag and drop or a configuration-based tool that allows you to model processes, allows you to model your data, build your user interfaces, define your security, and visually connect to other systems via web services. All in a single platform, all in something that looks like Microsoft Office. It's not really geared towards developers. It's geared towards all of you on the phone today. I'm confident that any of you could pick up this tool, sit down with it, define a workflow, push something out, and have an application running very, very quickly. From design, it allows you to manage and deploy. So we have a piece of the application that allows you to define environments, staging environment, UAT, production, push to multiple environments. Everything that you put into the repository is versioned and rolled back. You can roll back. So full support there. And then it also has a runtime environment where your end users are coming in and they're accessing those applications that you're delivering via rich user interfaces. It contains an end user reporting engine, so you don't have the need to write external reports that get delivered on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And finally, it has system interactions as well. So when that proposal gets to the order phase and we want to initiate an order in SAP, we can go ahead and do that. So this is some examples of the types of things that some of our customers have used our platform to build on. Very varied as far as industry and type of application. The ones kind of highlighted in blue are things that I've been directly involved with in building as a customer of Serena's. And I'm confident, again, that you will find plenty of use cases to leverage something like this in your organization. So to kind of wrap up, and I think, Michaelina, if you would agree, I will probably just talk about what we can do here and not necessarily look to answer questions as opposed to showing Serena Business Mashups itself. I think what we'll look to do here is talk about one of the things that we would like to do and a kind of offer to help you succeed, and that is you can go to Serena.com/mashups today, download a free trial. We set you up in our on-demand offering so that no infrastructure needed or required to build the app. Download Composer, build apps, deploy them into our cloud, run them, have end users go there and look at them, and if you decide that you wanted to buy the product, anything that you build is completely portable and can move over to an on-premise installation or continue to run in the cloud. We've got online training accessible directly from within the Composer tool, as well as access to our customer-based support team. And then very important to note, we have an existing repository, we call it Mashup Central, of pre-built mashups that are out there. If you're building an issue defect management tool, or you want to build an HR onboarding process, there are pre-built ones that are out there now that you can connect to, download into your Composer environment, take, tweak, deploy to your space, and you're up and running that much quicker because you didn't have to start from scratch. Those may solve 40% of your issue, they may solve 80 or 90% of your issue, but you do have access to those. You download them in, fully functioning, tweak them, as I said, and deploy, and off you go. So with that, if anyone is interested in the demonstration of the tool itself for how you actually build these process-based applications, I'm sure that we would be happy to do another webinar or contact you directly. But as we are a bit short on time, and I do want to get to questions, I will entertain questions at this point.
Great. Well, John, we've got a bunch of questions. So first question that came in early on was, can a user paste in graphics or formatted text into a field?
Yes. One of the things I didn't necessarily show was, so that's kind of talking about features and functionality of the Serena tool as a whole, as opposed to a UI design paradigm. And so I would say that, yes, the Serena tool can be used when you've got a data input field or a text input field can be converted to a rich WYSIWYG editor, if you will, so that text input field can support full HTML, can support pasting graphics and all of that. So yes.
Yep. So well, maybe we'll touch on some of the kind of design questions, too, as opposed to the ones that are specific to the application. There's a question that asks, can you suggest ways to design forms that users are encouraged to fill in optional fields as well?
I'm sure you know as well as I do that users are lazy. If they don't have to give you data, they won't. So if I want to, let's say from a reporting perspective, if I want to ensure that I actually get something I might take a few optional fields and ultimately require them, but allow them to say, very easily say, not applicable. So if it was a drop-down list, there'll be an option, an easy option right at the top that says, not applicable. So those sort of things. But short of requiring something, there will be that user community out there that if I don't have to give it to you, I'm not going to give it to you. And I don't care what you do to kind of wrestle it out of them. You're probably not going to do anything on a form that would really collect that data.
Yep. Here's another design question. Can you recommend any open source tools that you use for designing or creating UI pages?
I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that, only because perhaps I've been head down with Serena for so long, using that tool for about 10 years or so now, and most of that time, the vast majority, 90% of that time, as a customer, that was pretty much my tool of choice in delivering the application. So I apologize, but anything that I would offer would be a kind of a shot in the dark.
Fair enough. So let's go into some of the questions that were a little bit more specific. John?
Yeah.
Did you think of a tool?
Yeah, and this is going to sound really bad, but Serena does have a free tool called
Prototype Composer?
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. Prototype Composer. That is available. It is free of charge, so not necessarily open source, but if you're looking for a free tool for modeling UIs, applications, we do have that, and that is a very, very popular and very well downloaded application for us. So it's a Serena Prototype Composer, not Mashup Composer.
Yep.
We're not remembering the rest of our products.
So Anu asks, can you what is the repository stored as, and can proprietary data format? Sorry. So in the database where the data is stored, is it a proprietary data format or an industry standard?
The data in the database is a proprietary format in that Serena defines a set of application or a set of tables that are leveraged for the Serena application, and then any of the applications that you build on top of that would get their own table created. So it's not the table data structure is something that's specific to Serena. The output of when you build an application and you deploy it to multiple environments, that is output as a BPL structure or BPEL structure, and essentially is nothing more than an XML construct. So in that perspective, the output is somewhat standard, but we probably have to dig in a little bit deeper around what you were getting at there.
So next question from Jeff. He's asking, do people use Serena mostly for UI prototyping ideas and then develop using whatever application framework they're comfortable with, or is the main expectation that the UI prototype becomes the final product?
I've seen both. Ultimately, I think what will ultimately happen is as you get comfortable with the tool itself, you begin to realize that, why would I build this prototype in 2 weeks and then hand it to my developers to take 2 months or 2 quarters to deliver that in Java when it's going to do everything that I just built in the prototype. So I think you may bring it on initially as a tool that you look to build prototypes with, and that's fine, that's fair enough. But I think my expectation is that you would kind of rapidly swing over towards, well, if they're just going to build the exact same thing that I've got here, why would I bother? But I have definitely seen customers using it as a prototyping tool. I would say the vast majority of our customers, though, use it as an application platform, a production application platform.
Yep, great. Can you explain a little bit how do you migrate data in or out of the mashup?
I think what that person is getting at is kind of the system integration type thing. So how would I take data from this mashup? How would I take this, or let me start at the front end. So I've got this proposal tool, and I've got an opportunity in Salesforce.com, and I want to make sure that opportunity, I want to initiate this process from the CRM and pass the opportunity ID in so that I've got tie back, and then once the item is created, send the link to the proposal request back to the CRM. And we can do that all via web services. So every action in our application is web services enabled, so you can call them via a web service. So the submit transition that I performed where I started the process, that can be called via a web service, have a whole bunch of data fields mapped in to create that record. Record gets created and might call a web service back out to communicate back out the item ID, the link to the item, etc. So that might be an inbound web service call to Serena Business Mashups. And then kind of outbound, I get to the end of the process and I want to call into SAP to create that invoice. I can create what we call an orchestration that would allow me to visually assemble web service calls, visually map the data inputs from my mashup to the inputs on the WSDL, take the outputs, put in a calculation step, let's say, to get a variable back, make a decision, maybe branch into multiple different places that I might go down to perform different operations based on the resulting web service call. Maybe one of those branches has another web service call that goes back in and finally initiates that invoice creation, and then maybe one is a failure. It's, customer is on the blacklist, and they can't initiate any new order, so go back and take an action in the proposal to say update it to a different state to say it's on hold. All of that will be done by an orchestration, and again, that's all visual inside of our tool to assemble those external data calls to aggregate that data together. Hopefully that answered your question.
Actually, the follow-up was if you're a new client and you want to migrate existing data into the application, or if you're leaving, if you're going to stop using a service, how would you migrate your data out?
Actually, both in and out is fairly easy. So we do have a data import tool on the application that will allow you to connect to anything that you could connect to via ODBC, as well as flat file. And essentially, you just connect to that data source and map your data in that external data source into the data fields that you created in the mashup. Run an import, and all that data would actually come in. It's kind of the reverse on export. Because you are running on a SQL or an Oracle platform with a defined data structure, you could go at it from that perspective, or you could just write a massive report in the front end that had all of your columns of data, export that out to an Excel file, flat file, and then run another import into another system if you needed to. Might even build an orchestration to do that as well.
Speaking of orchestrations, if we can make that the last question, can you talk about how, if you need to bring in technical people to actually build out the orchestrations?
That's a really great question, because the way that the Composer tool is built and defined is each of the nodes or kind of main pieces of your application, your workflow design, your data design, UI design, at the very granular level of an individual form or an individual orchestration is checked out or checked in at that level. So you as a BA might be working on the workflow data design and UI design of your application. You've got all those components checked out, but the orchestration area of the application is not checked out. So you can have someone in IT who's developing the more technical web service interactions or orchestrations have Composer as well, and check out the orchestration area, build their orchestrations in concert with what you're building on the process side. And as those pieces are checked in, you've got those to leverage. Those orchestrations that are built, you can leverage those in your human process. So when I go from step 5 to step 6, please call this orchestration and pass this data into it. Take the return values, and depending on what that return value is, go to state X or state Y.
Great. Well, I think we still have a lot of other questions that are in the queue, and I think what we can do is because we're nearing the end of the webcast, we can get all these questions answered and post them up to our community, and we will send that out to everybody who's attended the webcast.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you guys sticking with me for an hour. I trust that, or I hope that this was a useful use of your time. I know that everyone's busy, and I really appreciate you all coming out for spending an hour with me. I'm humbled. So thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, John and Michaeline, and thank you again for everybody who participated in this webinar, and thank you for John for a very informative presentation. I wanted to point out that the webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at ModernAnalyst.com within a few days if you want to review this information or get some finer point from there. So this concludes today's event, and we hope you have a great day.